How's everybody doing today? Thank you for joining us. Super excited to be on this panel. Really grateful for Cannaspire to put this together, and the real goal, and we're going to drop the link at the end of this presentation, but it's to incentivize social equity applicants to apply. And we're looking to build an alliance really amongst professional service providers to start to be able to provide affordable, reasonable, and even in certain situations, free services. And so when I launched my law firm, I said I would work with select social equity clients for free. So if you've served time, my way to give back to you is to donate my time to you. And Cannaspire approached me and they said, you know what, we're inspired by this and we want to do our part. And they said, we will pick select social equity applicants per quarter, and we'll issue free security plans, and we'll pick an applicant per year and provide an entire free application. And to me, that was amazing because this is exactly what's needed. We're not saying that you could do this for everybody because everybody has to make a living, but to the extent we can come together and provide these types of resources for equity clients, that's what we need to do. And so that was the impetus to put this panel together. And we thought, who else can we bring on board? And so we have pretty amazing people, and I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves. But the goal for this panel is how to get a social equity cannabis business license in New Jersey. And so everybody has their parts, but let's start with the man of the hour, I think, and everybody will agree. Director Wesley McKnight, we're so grateful to have you from the CRC. Thank you. Director, if you just want to unmute yourself quickly and just give a quick intro, say hello.
Okay, I am not the man of the hour, but thank you all for putting this together. Thank you, Shirali.
I don't know if it's me, but I can't hear anything.
It might just be you, Shirali. I could hear.
Sorry,
Can you
guys.
hear me now?
I know you can hear me. I can't hear anything back, though.
I can hear him.
So let's take just a second.
I'm going to log out and log back in. If that's okay, because I can't hear.
Okay, while Shirali's getting that together, my name is Wesley McWhite. I'm the director of the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. Thank you again, Shirali, for helping put this together, and thank you, Cannaspire, for bringing folks together to talk about social equity. I'm really excited to be here and to see where the conversation goes.
Absolutely. I guess let's go around the horn just while we wait. Darren, you're like next in line there, sir. So,
Yeah, no problem. So my name is Darren Chandler Jr. I am president and co-founder of Premium Genetics. We are a social equity applicant. We were recently awarded our conditional cultivation license in the state of New Jersey. And I'm also director of Cannabis Real Estate at Ripco Real Estate. Ripco Real Estate is one of the largest independent real estate companies, commercial real estate companies in the tri-state area. We own a large market share of the retail sales. So we're actively trying to get cannabis operators that coveted cannabis real estate.
outstanding.
I'm sorry, guys. If you can continue the intros, I'm going to have to log back in because I can't hear anything. So my speakers are on because you guys can hear me, right?
Yes,
We can hear you.
Okay. I'm sorry about the hiccups. I'll be right back.
All right, Hubert, you want to go ahead?
Sure. My name is Hubert Klein. I am a partner at Eisner Advisory Group. We provide services from the compliance end for cannabis businesses. I'm a member of our cannabis services team. And we talk about the stuff that entrepreneurs have to deal with but aren't always happy about, which the tax compliance, the regulatory compliance, when you transition from a legacy business into a regulated business. What are the growing pains and the bumps that people have to deal with? So that's what we do.
Outstanding. And I'll just introduce myself really quick. My name's Warren Harris. I'm the Vice President of Regulatory Compliance at Cannaspire. Basically, I do business license application writing. Obviously, we've been very busy in New York and New Jersey with a number of social equity applicants. So, we're going to get into that today, and I'll turn it over to my colleague, Dave Myers.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm Dave Myers. I'm the Vice President of Security at Cannaspire, and I manage the security division, which makes me responsible for security-related planning and services for cannabis business clients.
I provide security consulting to clients in numerous states, as well as oversee development of security plans and security system design for cannabis businesses of all types.
Thanks, Dave. I'm back. I can hear everybody. Sorry about that. My name is Shirali Patel, the founder of Blaze Law Firm, an attorney in this space. I also have a platform called Blaze Responsibly, where I share free information and education for the community. So super excited. We have a lot to go over, and I know we want to keep it tight on timing because we have a lot of people here who have to go to places. So let's start. We have some overarching themes, but we want to hit on the most important things, which are how to qualify and apply for a social equity license, and general information for applicants. And then ultimately, if we have time, what to expect when you're running a cannabis business and when it comes to the issues and the challenges finding locations, fundings, et cetera. And then we want to leave time for Q&A at the end, because I think that that's probably the most valuable thing for everybody that's here. So let's start with just basic questions. Director, if we can start with you, can you just tell everybody what is the Office of Diversity and Inclusion and what are its functions, and what is your role
So
there?
the Office of Diversity and Inclusion was written into legislation. It is a statutorily written requirement for the CRC to have this office. So it shows right out of the gate the commitment that the state of New Jersey has to reach equity goals and see diversity, equity, and inclusion in our cannabis market. So statutorily, it is the Office of Diversity and Inclusion's responsibility to make sure a certain number of licenses are awarded to certified minority, women, and disabled veterans-owned businesses. In conjunction with that is this office's function to recommend, to implement, and to strategize policies, practices, protocols, and procedures that help us get to those goals. In my office, really, one of the main tenets of this office is outreach and engagement. And so a lot of my full force effort is making sure that we are connected to all sectors of the community across this great state to make sure that we are receiving the right kinds of feedback from the community, addressing barriers that applicants or potential applicants and eventual business owners are running into, to make sure that we are realizing that goals, and that anything that is preventing us from getting to those goals, we would then recommend policies to address those.
That's awesome. How long have you been with
I have been here for 100 long years. No, I have been here since October, but it feels like 100 years. So yes, I've been here since October.
Okay, and since you've been there, has that been like the growth? Is that the birth of the Office of Diversity and Inclusion? Like, did it start with you, and then now you guys are staffing more individuals?
Yeah,
to help
absolutely.
Out with this?
It's been me for a little while now, but we are bringing in individuals soon here to help out with the work, because it's expanding and it is expansive. The way we see social equity now is not how it's always going to be. We're always going to continue to build on that. And as we build, we'll continue to staff and continue to expand our reach, continue to do this work and realize those goals.
Thank you. And to that point, can you tell us how social equity, diversity, inclusion policies have been used thus far in implementing these types of programs, and what future social equity programs could potentially look like?
Yeah, sure. So even at the onset of the establishment of our initial rules, we wanted to make sure that the CRC wanted to make sure that even before this office got up and running and doing the bulk of its work, that already in our initial rules is what we like to call a social equity framework. So that includes the very popular priority application review, which allows for not just social equity, but those that are certified minority, women, and disabled-owned veteran businesses, those that live in economically disadvantaged areas or impact zones, even micro businesses. It gives them an opportunity to get their applications reviewed first in an order of priority, which allows us to establish a diverse view of the market at the very onset of our new cannabis market and industry here in New Jersey. It gives us an opportunity to kind of expand and throw out a wide net to make sure that we are capturing those that fit within those categories. So if you're a social equity applicant, all this information is on our website, but if you're a social equity applicant, you're sort of part of that 1A after we verify you. But anytime you apply, no matter when you apply, you are put into your priority designation. So that's priority review as a part of our social equity framework. Equitable access to information. There's a lot of jurisdictions and states that are also doing this work, but I believe that New Jersey stands tall with the amount of information that we have free to the public. So the same information that consultants, lawyers, and other folks that are being hired to help with applications is the same information the general public has. And we want to make sure that through our website, through how-to webinars that will be updated frequently, through community engagement and outreach, that we're constantly updating our Q&As, making sure that the public has access to all of the information they need to apply for a license and then run a successful cannabis business. We are also some of the lowest fees in the country, some fees as low as $100. So our application fee structure lends itself to diversity, equity, and inclusion, making sure that folks that want to be involved don't see high application fees at the state level as a barrier. And then this, lastly, our outreach, engagement, and relationship building is a major component of what we do in this office. As I said earlier, making sure that we are on the ground hearing from folks that are applying or want to apply and addressing their needs and trying as best as we can to implement policies that to address those needs and try to reduce as many barriers as possible. So that's just the framework. The exciting part of this work is what's to come. We are currently working on a technical assistance program with our Business Action Center, but you can already visit the Business Action Center, and I will surely drop these links into the chat, where there is, through the Office of Innovation, there are modules for you to follow to help you apply and to start a cannabis business just like any other business in New Jersey. So they're offering services, but we're continuing to build out a technical assistance program. We're looking at a access to capital program to help individuals get started in this industry. As we know, access to capital is a major barrier for folks to get into this industry, and we want to make sure that we address that. And just overall, I'm just really excited about the direction that this office and the CRC is going in. The possibilities are almost limitless as long as they're within the confines of the law. But I want to encourage folks that are listening, and anytime I get into audience with folks, that we are striving to make sure that New Jersey is top tier when it comes to our social equity policies, top tier for the resources that we offer. And so far, we do measure up very well with other jurisdictions that are also doing this work. So and just reminding folks that this is the beginning of the industry, and as it grows, this office will grow, our responsibilities will grow, and our policies will grow as well.
Thank you, Director. I really do appreciate that. I'm excited for the technical assistance program to open up and just be able to tell my clients, hey, there's a pool of capital that you can access that's coming from this year.
Also,
so
if
amazing.
I could just mention one last thing, also with the ATCs, the alternative treatment centers that were allowed to convert over and start selling into the adult use market, we are holding them accountable and building relationships with them as well. As a part of their conversion into the adult use market, they had to submit a social equity plan. And so through the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, we are building out a social equity scorecard, which would be the first in the nation to make sure that we are holding large MSOs, multi-state operators, accountable to what they said that they will do to make sure that they are impacting our communities, educating our communities, and providing resources and assistance for small businesses to get started and to help shape the future of this very diverse industry. That's the last thing.
That's excellent. I think that's needed, right? Because there's no other way to hold operators accountable. But if you do now, and now if you have a grade list, it's like you're back in school, right? It's like, okay, who's getting the A's? We want to visit these dispensaries. And is the scorecard going to be both for the entire operations, for the cultivation aspect, manufacturing, dispensary as well, or is it just looking at one facet?
So far, we're still working out the details. I'll have more information for you later, but just it will be public facing, and it will be something that the public will not only have input in, will be able to see as well.
Thank you. That's super helpful. And Warren, thanks for dropping the link in the chat. The website that the director mentioned, I mean, I'm on it probably every single day because number one, I want to make sure if there's updated FAQs. So the FAQs do get updated frequently, and this is free information, right? So a lot of the basic questions that you might want to know, there's probably already an FAQ out there for you guys to answer. And then I'll just quickly mention, director mentioned the priority in applications. That's probably one of the most important things, and it matters tremendously when it comes to submitting these applications, because you shouldn't worry about when you're applying, especially if you're a social equity applicant, if you're in an impact zone, or you're a diversely owned business, whether it's minority owned, women owned, disabled, veteran owned. No matter when you apply, you're going to go into your priority list. So 1 to 10, right? If you're social equity, you're going to the top of the list. Even if you apply 6 months from now, you're only going to be behind other social equity applicants in that priority that applied before you. So I think it's more important to have everything together versus being the quickest to put these applications in because of this rolling application list and a priority review. So definitely check out the website for that. Moving on to just how do we prepare for these applications and really what do we need to get ready? And I'm going to start a little bit backwards because this is a really big component. Security. Security is not only important for the state application, but it's a huge component when it comes to the local applications. And when you ultimately, in order to operate in the state, you will need to get a resolution of support or a letter from the governing body of the municipality in which you want to operate out of. And a lot of times the municipalities want to know, what are your security plans, right? Because that's ultimately what they care about for the most part. And so I think maybe David, if you can, in your opinion, what's the best way for social equity applicants to develop thorough security plans for their applications that they can also use at the local level then?
Yeah, it's a good question. And to kind of follow up on what you just said, so to acquire your license, you're going to need, whether you're a social equity applicant or not, you're going to need a comprehensive and complete security plan. And if you're applying for a conditional license, you're going to need it within 120 days after receiving your conditional. Simply drafting a document that regurgitates the New Jersey CRC security regulations and calling it a security plan is not going to be enough. It takes a thorough understanding of physical security and operational security procedures to interpret those regulations and formulate a thorough security plan that can be accepted by the CRC. In addition, many local municipalities can adopt a few security regulations of their own, and they may require a security plan for site approval. Or at the very least, they may require that the security plan be reviewed by local law enforcement. And if they don't sign on, you may not get your site approval. So the big challenge that the social equity applicants face when it comes to licensing and security plans is just not having the ability to acquire the expertise needed to fully interpret the security regulations, both at the state and local level, and then formulate that comprehensive security plan that's required for a successful application. And when I say ability, it may not include having prior or relevant business experience, not having networking within the cannabis industry to get assistance, or little knowledge of available resources or how to acquire them, but that main factor is going to be the money. So when it comes to the best way for social equity applicants to develop thorough security plans for their application, 4 simple words: don't go it alone. And I would insist on that advice for not just security, but at all stages from your application. Educate yourself. We just, Wes gave great information about the website and the free information that's available. If you don't find that as helpful, enlist the help from a bona fide cannabis business consultant or a security consultant, a specialist in the cannabis security who's knowledgeable and understands both state and local regulations, has experience in security design and development of security plans, and should have a professional certification in physical security and security management.
Thanks, Dave. What would you say that? when it comes to the security plans, what is one of the most important things that social equity or any applicant should be focusing on? Is it like panic buttons? Is it, making sure 21 and over like are getting into the business? Like, what would you say are some of the most important components for people to think about?
Right. So drafting a security plan is not just simply about putting cameras somewhere or panic buttons. It also includes a lot of operational procedures. It includes employee training. So again, so educate yourself. There's a lot of information on the internet when it comes to cannabis security, or call up a cannabis business security consultant who can kind of talk you through that procedure when it comes to formulating your security plan. You want something that's very comprehensive, that contains physical security features, operational features, cybersecurity features. So it includes those technological features as well, but not just simply something that is going to, again, regurgitate those security requirements that are put out by the CRC.
Thanks, Dave. I think sometimes people overlook cybersecurity, so I'm glad you pointed some of that stuff out. Darren, my guy, has won a conditional license, and I can't wait for him to convert and become final. But Darren, you've gone through this whole process, right? So can you give people who are tuning in just a brief but still a step-by-step overview of what you need to do from now until your doors are open? And I mean now as in, you want to submit your application, right? Like getting ready to submitting until doors open. Like, can you give us a little concise overview?
I mean, well, the first thing is, someone was asking about it, is you really have to create your strategy, right? So you have to decide whether I'm going to apply as a conditional, or I'm going to apply as an annual, and what priority list I'm going to fall into. And once you decide that, it's going to then, help you decide how you have to, manage your application. If you decide to go conditional, you don't need your real estate, you don't need your financing, and you pretty much only really need 3 major documents in order to apply. Kudos to the CRC for making the process much easier this time. Medical was totally different, and they're doing a great job with simplifying the process. So for me, I went through conditional. So the next steps, now I have my conditional license. So I have to move through the conversion process. So I have to finalize my real estate, which I already had. I have to finalize my town resolution, which I already had, my financing, and then really just finalizing the SOPs in order to reapply again, get that conversion completed, finish everything on the municipality level, and then start my construction and build out. So for us, hopefully we can be up and running by Q3 of next year. So our plans is to hopefully start construction in October.
Okay. So you were in a position where you had secured, I'm assuming when you submitted your conditional, you at that time you had property secured and you already had the local support secured?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so it was a strategic move, right? So like to your point, it's really about being strategic when you apply. Just because you don't have to have property secured doesn't mean you can't go ahead and identify it, and doesn't mean you can't do that legwork first and get that support. Because I think that's even better, right? To apply as a conditional, knowing you already have the local support.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I mean, I think you should always just, from the way it's designed, I think conditional is the way to go. But simultaneously, you should be trying to get your local approval, because that's really the game now. And, since the municipalities have made it limited, a lot of spots are already taken. So you have to take that initial initiative and reach out to the towns. You have to get in front of the towns, even if you don't get a property. If you build that relationship with the towns, it kind of, puts you in a really good position for the towns then to work with you, because they see your business plan. They see, what type of community player you want to be. They will, empower you. I've seen it happen a lot of times.
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that. That's for anybody that's tuning in. I mean, you don't need to hire a lobbyist or a lawyer or a consultant to go show up at city council meetings. Show up. That's half of the battle, right? Because the more you show up, they'll remember you. You can be that person that's consistently at city council meetings, asking questions, build that trust, build a relationship, and then do it organically. So it's not forceful, right? And there's a lot of municipalities that haven't opted in. Go to those municipalities. start educating them, hold their hand, tell them the process, and you can potentially be the first to help them do it and help craft that ordinance, right? That's permissible. And so I think, especially if you're competing in these towns where it is limited licenses, where they've already given out everything, it might be worth your efforts to try going after another municipality that isn't open yet and trying to do that education process, because I think that is a lot of it. We've talked about location. I think that's one of the hardest things in this state is finding affordable real estate. So Hubert, can you give us any tips or just advice on finding a location?
Yeah, I mean, bottom line, location, but price is a driver for a lot of people. You have to do your homework and you have to search out. There are areas and pockets within the state where real estate is less expensive. However, there's a lot of other things that go into it. What is the infrastructure that's needed within the confines of the building and the location of where it's at? So you have to do all that, because you're going to look at fire suppressant systems, you're going to look at electrical service and water service and all these other things. So it's not as easy as just going out and finding the building. It's, finding one that's going to fit your needs and also give you the ability to grow. Pretty much, Darren was talking about, Darren's heavily invested in this area. He does a lot in this space. And, Darren was talking about a build out for other people. Even once you find your real estate, that build out isn't happening in 2 to 3 months, right? That build out is far down the road. So find the localities, make sure that they're cannabis friendly, and you can kind of do your due diligence and research, but you want to be in a cannabis friendly municipality. Right now, especially in northern New Jersey, I would say you have a lot of cannabis unfriendly locales with a lot of available and good quality real estate. Find one that's going to work for you and try to work with these operations. It's an educational experience, but finding the right facility is knowing what your plan is and what you need. And I think that's where a lot of people fall down. It's not as easy as just finding a storefront or finding an abandoned warehouse and thinking that you can open a cannabis operation, because it's not like a vegetable garden. There is a science to this business, and everybody who's listening today, who's looking at this, you are entrepreneurs, and whether you like it or not, you're in the agriculture business. You're a quasi farmer. And there's a lot more to learn, and it's not just fertilizer and water. So you need to find a facility that can handle what you need to do. And I guess going back to what the director said earlier, go to their website. It is the most user-friendly website I've ever been on, and I've done stuff in Illinois. And comparing that to New Jersey is night and day for information and guidance on things. So find out where they are, the location, see what your needs are, and make sure you have an ability to grow, because eventually they may be allowing you to do more under the growing side of it and the retail side, right? You got to find out. Obviously, you're not going to be within the parameters of a school zone, but there's other places. So know what your needs are and what your business plan will call for. And don't get caught in the circle of hiring an expert all the time, because you can get into a lot of trouble. I mean, Darren, you want to talk about what happens there? You've seen it.
Well, what I wanted to double down, and encourage people to apply conditional is your runway, right? So you have a good amount of time. So right now they're trying to get the conditionals out within about 90 days. Then you have an additional 5.5 months in order to go through the conversion process. So that almost gives you about 8 months, basically, plus. So that, talking about strategy, talking to towns that are opted in that, maybe they're on the fence, that gives you enough runway to then really become that local expert, as we were discussing, right? Building that strategy that, you have that, that amount of time in order to resubmit. So you can work with the town, you can show them data on how other towns have done it, how they succeeded, where the sales are. Now we have real data, what the sales of the stores are doing.
Right.
So these things will incentivize the towns to opt in. And then if you're bringing the data, they incentivize them to work directly with you. So apply conditional, and you have enough time to, solve a lot of issues.
And I was a
Thanks, guys.
chairman of a zoning board for many years. People who come in with detailed, organized plans usually get heard versus the person who tries to come in haphazarded, where, a lot of people appointed to these commissions will shut down. If you come in with a detailed, organized plan and you sell it right, there's good chances that you can get within a municipality.
Warren, to your earlier point, when you mentioned, when it comes to finding a location, you really have to look at what your business model is, what your plans call for, especially when it comes to cultivation. You're not just looking for a big warehouse, right? You want to, how much energy, what is your power? It should be better. It should be over 1800 amps minimum, right? What is your water source? Is it a public source? Is it a well? Ceiling height? All that stuff comes into play, right? Shared utilities. How much is the municipality involved in this? And then when you go to the municipality, the second part of it is when you go prepared, they're going to want to know, when it comes to cultivation specifically, what are your plans for water conservation, energy reduction, right? Recyclable plans. And so sustainability, all of that, clean energy, all of that goes into play with cultivation and manufacturing. And then when you have the retail facility, making sure that your location has enough space for your vault on site potentially, to have employee break rooms. And then the website of the CRC website, that 2,500 square feet, they say that you can be in a greater footprint. You just can't operate more than 2,500 square feet. So don't just limit yourself to only finding buildings that are no more than 2,500 square feet. That's not their intention. They want you to convert potentially in the future and grow bigger. So they're not limiting you to that 25. It's just paying attention to those definitions. And so thank you guys for that.
Well, one of the big issues too, people have to look at for the cheap real estate. A lot of these old factories that a lot of people want to convert to the grow facilities are in flood zones. That's a big issue too for a lot of people in the real estate market, is to stay away from the flood zones, especially if you're doing agricultural products.
Thank you. Warren, we've been talking, and I'm bouncing around, but I want to be able to get as much as I can before we go to Q&A. What are other ways that specifically women, social equity applicants, minority applicants can get into the industry without owning a plant touching business?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I mean, it's basically following right off of Hubert's point, right? That you can buy real estate and try to retrofit it. Sometimes the retrofit can cost as much as building brand new, because you've got to redo all of your insulation values. Sustainability is a huge issue. You've got to try to recapture your HVAC water, set up some sort of sustainable resource. Energy, hydroelectric is what we did in Hawaii. And so what it ultimately comes down to, you want a really good cultivation or manufacturing facility, it kind of needs to be purpose built. I'm not saying you couldn't find a warehouse and retrofit it. By the time you're done, it might cost you as much as getting an I-beam building and putting up the cold steel frame. So how do, minority, women-owned businesses and disabled veterans get into this industry when the hurdle for entry is just so high? Like, who's going to be able to buy a brand new building or, retrofit a warehouse? Well, this is where these individuals, all of these applicants in New Jersey, are being pushed to try to hire and increase, inclusivity for these individuals in the industry. I would like to give a shout out to the Minority Cannabis Academy. They do training for cultivators. They do training for, bud tenders and dispensaries. And this would be a really good area from the application perspective to include them on your application and go ahead and start making that commitment to say, hey, we're going to hire local. We're going to make sure that these minorities and these impacted groups are included in our business. And then you start learning the industry. You learn how to grow cannabis. You learn how to manufacture. You learn how to run a retail dispensary. The market nationally is very young. And New Jersey's just getting started. So who's to say that in, 3 to 5 years, when we're looking at maybe a potentially tri-state market or even a federal market, that there could be just a ton of new business opportunities, and there's a skills gap. We have to get these individuals trained up in order to be able to even be a savvy operator. You wouldn't want to talk to somebody about cultivation who's only grown in, their closet or, a basement. So.
Yeah, thank you. And I think I've said this often. This isn't my quote. I've heard it elsewhere, but they compare the cannabis industry to the gold rush when they say the people that got rich were like Levi's jeans, people like selling the shovels and all, not the actual guys mining. It's almost similar in this industry where it's like, especially when regulations aren't complete, when federal legalization hasn't occurred, there's so many nuances and challenges. You can get your feet wet by just being on the side, ancillary support, or getting your skills up and ready, right? And then deciding, especially for social equity applicants. For me, a lot of my clients, they're coming from the legacy side. So sophistication, terminology, and I have to have really difficult conversations with them and tell them like, we need to refine your skill sets because then I can get you in front of investors and we can get you funded. But you're being judged automatically. And that's a problem. And so how do we get these guys to suit it up so that they can participate and they can get that VC money that they deserve? They got to go through skills and training. And so that's why I'm hoping, like what the director said, like that technical assistance program, we can see more of that. Like you just mentioned, the Minority Business Academy, like we need more of these programs. And so I'll ask everybody, and Darren, I'll start with you. Are there any other programs that you know about that can help you start a successful cannabis business?
Well, I think MCA, probably in the state of New Jersey, they're doing the best. They're just the front standing. Wesley's put it out there, use all the information they have on the CRT website. But I think most importantly, specifically with the cannabis industry, the narrative has been pushed for everyone to try to instantly be an owner. And outside of cannabis, my whole entire family are entrepreneurs. But you got to start somewhere. So I think that if you really want to get into the space, sometimes you don't have to be an owner up front. You should start off as an employee, really learn the ins and outs of the industry, even if you was a legacy operator. It's a totally different ball plan. So I think just going and working for one of these dispensaries, working for a cultivation or a manufacturing site, really putting that work in for a year or two will give you the necessary tools that no other class is going to be able to give you. That's how I started. Me and my father created a company in 2016. We went and did consultant work for 4 years before we turned around and applied for our license in the state of New Jersey. So, we have that experience that we can pull from. So I encourage everyone to do that. You should be an employee before you be a boss.
Thank you. Dave, Warren, Hubert, Director, you guys have any comments on any other programs or anything that you think is out there that can help?
Well, I think there's various programs around the country and in New Jersey. Some of the local colleges have things on cannabis business training. Obviously, there's a cost to that, but never discount the free education that's out there from various organizations and even from state organizations as well. Search the web. We're on a webinar right now, right? You have access to a computer, you can go search. There's a lot of good free information as well as the paid for information where you can educate yourself and get the basics that you need to educate yourself, to know what questions you need to ask and where you can turn to get the more refined information that you may need. So it's just a matter of looking for it, but it's there, especially at the community colleges. A lot of things today. This is the hot topic.
So Stockton University does have a cannabis studies department. I'm actually representing a couple students out there. Hi, Ben and Xavier, if you're out there listening. And they actually have great knowledge of not only how to start a business, but, some of the ins and outs of what their cultivation facility is actually going to need. And at very least, it's given them the background to know when they're hearing the right information. So when we're vendor vetting, what's the pounds per light? What's the output in terms of wattage? They have a sense of, what it's going to take to be financially successful just from a business perspective, even though they haven't really touched a plant or actually operated a facility. So, education is key. Knowledge is power. Definitely reach out and, sign up for a Stockton College class if you have to. You might learn something.
I would just say the community colleges is what I was going to bring up on our website. underneath in the diversity and inclusion page, underneath Train to Work in Cannabis, are current community college programs that are offering some sort of certificate to get you some basic knowledge and get you started in the cannabis industry, even if you're just interested in learning more. And more community colleges are coming on board across the state. But if your community college or your nearest where your institution isn't offering anything, call them up and tell them we need a cannabis program in our town, in our city. Call your mayor and let them know that we need some sort of training, because once this industry really gets up and running, we're going to need trained, capable and educated New Jerseyans to staff, retail spaces, manufacturing, cultivation spaces as well. And then also the New Jersey Business Action Center. I cannot stress enough how important a partner they have been in this space. They are talking to so many folks through their customer service line, through their online messaging portal, and helping people and guide them into not just starting a business, but also applying for a license in New Jersey. And I'll drop their link in the chat as well.
Thank you, Director. It's a super helpful website, and it's also helpful for anybody that's looking to just start an entity. You want to start your corporation, you want to start your LLC. There's a step-by-step tutorial on that website. It's very easy, and you don't need to have a consultant to walk you through that. The goal is to try to minimize the cost to the extent possible using these free resources and tools. Yes, you're going to need experts because the rules are consistently changing. Security is a big aspect. The SOPs are living, breathing documents, right? So the most important thing is you're not just submitting this application to the state and saying, here it is, and I'm licensed, I'm up and running. You're submitting plans that you're going to abide by. Your standard operating procedures, your adverse event recall procedures, these are real documents. And so take it seriously. Don't just pay for them and then not look at them, right? Review them, understand them, ask your questions, get your money's worth when you're getting these documents ultimately delivered to you. Before we go to Q&A, I'll ask everybody, because I think most people want to know funding, right? So number one, and this question is going to vary depending on the type of business, but on average, how much does it cost to start a cannabis business, depending on the license type? And then part two, how do you get funding? So let's start. Director, do you have any comments on this one?
I'll let everyone else go first, and I'll kind of close it out.
Okay, sure.
So
I'll go up.
Cultivation's expensive, right? So that's what I was saying about you almost need to build a custom building. It's not that you couldn't retrofit. I used to grow in a warehouse in LA way back when in Prop 64 in California, but it's not ideal, right? This is supposed to be a clean facility that's producing, consumable food grade product, right? Manufacturing, probably even higher to start up because of the equipment. You're talking short path distillation kits, you're talking hydrocarbon extraction, closed loop systems with vacuum pumps, class 1 division 1 modular extraction spaces. That alone can be $250,000. It's easily a $1 to $2 million prospect just to get manufacturing. You could probably start really cheap and do something simple and break in. If you'd like to talk about that, I consult on these things all the time. Happy to get into that. But then retail dispensaries tend to be the low-hanging fruit. We see a lot of clients that are converting banks and old buildings into other spaces, and you could probably do that for a few $100,000. I would say the big cost is going to be hiring your employees and getting your initial product. You do have a limit of 1,000 pounds a month of product if you're a micro business. No cap for the full size. So, you can easily spend $100,000, $200,000 just stocking your shelves to make sure that you're ready on day one. So that's just a little background of how it goes. And then securing funding, it's all private lending and equity right now. And this is the biggest problem in the industry. It's the biggest problem for minority applicants is, you've come from potential economic hardship and now you're expecting somebody to lend you a ton of money for a business. So it just becomes a really steep ask. And so that's where I think I would echo what everyone's been saying on the panel. Get a strong business model. Show how you're going to succeed. Show that you know the ins and outs of the business. and really educate yourself to be able to educate, the municipality and the state about how, what a strong prospect this is going to be. No one wants to license a business that's going to fall flat on its face in 6 months.
Right. I think you just hit the nail on the head, right? The best plan is the one where people want to fund, all right? You don't want to go to the person who basically says, hey, I'm going to make a lot of money because I'm in the cannabis business. Well, that's fine. If you watch Shark Tank, nobody gets any money doing that, right? But the people with the methodical plan who can articulate their plan, tell them what their vision is, because part of this is also the vision for the business, right? It's not just getting product, opening the door, and selling. All right, it's about having the best plan and understanding your business before you even are in business. And I think that's the strongest thing when a funding company comes in, whether it's a private equity or some unconventional funding, until the banks can get into it. But it can be a very profitable business, and there's people out there willing to lend money. It's like anything else. You have to sell yourself. And there's a lot of people, especially on this webinar, who are people who can help you develop that skill set to articulate what your business is, refine it, define it, and help you do the sales pitch. But it's really the best laid plan is the one that's going to get at least looked at versus somebody with just a couple of pieces of paper.
Dave, Darren, anything to add?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you'll see a lot of business owners that want to get in the industry who are not prepared, who do not have that business plan, like Hubert mentioned, and end up getting that sticker shock when they see the bottom line. And it's not even just about the manufacturing equipment, the POS systems, but then when you tack on security systems, you're talking just for a retail dispensary in the tens of thousands up to $100,000+, eyes wide open, right? You have to be prepared. You have to educate yourself so you don't get that sticker shock, and that you're ready to open up a business.
But I don't want to let us leave it on that. It sounds kind of harsh when we say it's all about the money. You have the ability to make a lot of money if you do everything right and you get your funding. Right. So we should end this with a positive spin is you're all going to be entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs, the sky is the limit, right? It's based on your drive and determination. So even though there's a lot of money that may be needed and there's sources for the funding, you will and can make a lot of money when you're successful in this industry.
Yeah. And Darren, go ahead.
No, well, yeah, keeping it positive, the numbers, yeah, I've seen about $500 a square foot for cultivation right now for construction. And then, yeah, for retail, it's probably about $250,000 to $300,000 for your build out. Probably need about $2 million overall to carry all your costs. But the money is out there. And what I always tell clients, you have to look at it as each part of the application process is an exercise, right? So you need to get approved by the municipality. That's a whole entire exercise. You need to get approved by the state. That's a whole entire exercise. If you're able to make it through those exercises, you're going to be able to have a solid package to then go to the individual investors and then sell that again. So just going through the process is the exercise itself.
Thank you, Darren. And I wanted to mention, you said that it took you spent 4 years before you decided to apply for this license, correct?
So, it took 4 years because the state had to catch up to where we were going, but yeah.
Well, so I just want to say something like the most important thing for me is education. If you're going to not educate yourself and not do your due diligence, you will get taken for a ride. And there's many predators out here and sharks that are waiting to take advantage of you. Don't be that person that rushes and says, I have a plan and I want to get funded. Do all the work on your own as much as you can, and then decide, okay, where do I need to bring people in? What are my skills? What are my weaknesses? Do that analysis for yourself and take your time. If it takes you a year, 2 years, 3 years, this market isn't closing today, anytime soon, right? Our CRC is keeping this process open on purpose. It's a rolling basis. They want to give people opportunities. They want to get businesses up and running. And they know ultimately after 2-3 years, a lot of businesses they're going to consolidate. There's going to be M&A activity, right? Big guys are going to acquire the little guys. That's great. Know your exit strategy day one before you get into this space. Is your exit strategy to build generational wealth and to pass this down to your kids? Or is this do you want to transfer your license off, or do you want to build a brand? Whatever that is, you have to know what it is that you're doing before you start, because you're just going to keep fumbling along the way as you try to figure that out. So I think the resonating theme has been that business plan really matters. Be strategic in it, and really just stay focused and invest in yourself. That's one of the most important things. Director, did you have anything else to add before we switch
Yeah, I wanted
Q&A?
to address, I think Chantel's comment about, just access to capital just being tough, and just hearing the numbers from the excellent panelists. I do want to say that access to capital programs are possible. If you look at other state level, as I'm referring to, right? If you look at other jurisdictions and states, it is happening. And so I encourage you to continue to do your research, continue to gain as much knowledge as you can, but also look for, private investors and private funders that will be interested in making sure that you are funded, as long as you have, a great business plan and model to point to, that folks would be interested in investing. But in the long term and not so distant future, we want to have a state level program that addresses that, because we understand that access to capital is an extreme barrier to achieving diversity in this state. And so I encourage you to talk to your elected officials about those kinds of needs, because just talking to us is not going to get it done. We have to make sure that not just we are informed, because we know, right? We want to make sure our public officials, our elected officials that wrote this legislation sees access to capital as a tool to get us to our diversity goals. You can't have social equity without access to capital.
And just to piggyback on that, because I read that question and I was going to jump in when I saw it, but you stepped in, which is great. You don't have to go it alone. All right. For some people who are getting these licenses, it seems daunting and unachievable. It's not. You don't have to go it alone. All right. There's people, like you said, the business plan, the model, what you're looking to do. There are people who will back you and get behind you. This happens all the time in every business with an idea across the country. So if you own a license or you're getting a license, don't think you have to go it alone. There's funding, there's education, there's training, and I've seen what happened in the state of Illinois. New Jersey is night and day compared to the state of Illinois with its equity program and wanting to look at funding, because there is one that really fell down and really put disadvantaged people at risk just by giving them a license.
And I will say, you guys are attending webinars like this. There's 60 plus people in the chat. Network amongst yourself, build your cooperative, build your community, collaborate, because you're not competing with one another, right? You're competing for market share. Look at it that way. But that doesn't mean like the cultivators are going to need retailers, right? You're going to want to build exclusive strains, exclusive products. You want to have vendors that you can rely on. So it's not just you, yourself, and I, right, alone in this. Like, you really need to build out your local supply chain and that ecosystem of businesses that you trust. So you got to start talking to one another and really connecting. And so I hope that people who did join in do connect with one another, because really that's the goal. I know that there was a ton of questions that dropped in the chat. I'm wondering if that's the best way to do it, or I don't know if there's a feature, because I can't see if people can raise their hand, but let me go back in the chat and see, because I saw you guys were answering questions as they were coming in. So thank you, Director, Darren, Warren, whoever else was chiming in the chat. I appreciate that, because that helped. Somebody did ask about, do applicants, so for conditionals, do you have to have location before you submit an application? So Darren, like you said, you don't need to have a location secured. You do have to have an address identified as far as your business plan. So just saying, I'm considering this location. If it works out, great. But during that, Darren, go ahead. You want to speak to that?
Yeah, so you can say I've engaged with the landlord. We began discussions. Something's not finalized, but yeah, you can go down that path with your application for conditional. And if, when you get your conditional license, if you need to move, you just move.
Okay, thank you. David Turner and Doris Turner, they asked, if my region contains an impact zone, but the locality is unwilling to allow my business type, what can I do? Anybody have any comments on that?
So I've been telling people to start lobbying now. Like, all of this got passed during an election year. So there was a lot of hesitance, for these local municipal officials to adopt cannabis and then risk, some sort of fallout from their constituency, right? So now things are starting to get moving. Tax revenue is going to start flowing in. It already has, presumably, and no one wants to be left out of, there's potential 2% excise tax on all of these businesses for the local level. That's a lot of money. So again, when you're building your business plan, try and calculate out how much revenue you're actually going to bring for your municipality. Be like, wow, we're going to create $40,000 in tax revenue. This is going to be a huge windfall. And then also, when you're developing your community outreach and impact plan, ask the community what they need. Do they have a firefighters picnic that they need sponsored every year? Do they have a little league team? What is the need in your community that your business could potentially fulfill above and beyond just being an excellent cannabis shop?
Right. Warren, you're absolutely right. It's an educational thing. I mean, I know of one town in northern New Jersey where the town is vehemently against the opening of a grow facility. People pick it outside, the whole 9 yards. It's in an industrial side of town, not near anything. And a friend of mine is on the fire department here and basically says, the revenue raised for this would buy us all new fire equipment. And the town would not have to raise the tax base or go out for bonding. And it's going to be a grow facility. It's also an educational thing. And when the media and everybody gets on board, listen, in most of the towns where people oppose it, there's 2 or 3 very vocal people who will show up at every event. And the rest of the town is either, hey, we support it, but we're not putting our neck on the line, or most of the time, I really don't care, people, right? And that's what's in most municipalities. It's a matter of, listen, it's going to help with the tax base. It's going to help provide revenue. And, it's not going to be this unsightly scene like you see the cigar shop right there. No, the regulations and everything, especially for grow facilities, like I said, you could operate one right next to an Amazon warehouse and you would not know what's in there. And that's a matter of just educating people of what's going on. Everybody wants to see the bad in it. And, it's a matter of letting them know what the good is. And there is a lot of good in it. The medical side has proved it. And, on the retail side for recreational consumption, it's not the candy store, right? It's not Bazooka bubblegum being sold for a penny. Now I'm showing my age. But in a retail store, those are really usually classy operations, and people go in and out, and there's security in the whole 9 yards. So little kids are not going in. Teenagers under 21 are not going in and purchasing product or browsing. So it's a matter of just educating everybody of the reality of the business, as opposed to people trying to stigmatize it as negative. And like I said, it's 3 to 4 people in most municipalities.
So we're still in an era of prohibition, right? And so there's a lot of education that needs to be done. There's a lot of stigma still associated with the plant and people who want to be associated with it. So education is the key. Having the right conversations, having difficult conversations, and it starts in your inner home and then your community, right? And then expand onwards. Director,
I want to address Jasmine's comment about I'm in New Jersey. Me and my business partner are looking to apply for social equity application as minority women. And that just triggered something for me. I want to make very clear before we leave is that social equity doesn't always mean minority. And so what we're finding when we're looking through these applications is that because you are a person of color, there's an assumption for some reason that means I'm only applying as social equity. Social equity is a very specific definition. That is someone that has past criminal convictions or lives in an economically disadvantaged area. If you do not, if that doesn't meet you, if that doesn't describe you in some kind of way, if you can't apply as that designation and you are a person of color, you can apply as a certified minority, women, or disabled veteran-owned business, which is a separate priority designation. What's happening is if you apply as a social equity applicant, and when we're reviewing that and there's no evidence of that, or you can't prove your social equity designation, then it triggers the cure process, and you would have to then switch your designation to something else, which just it creates more time for you to get your application reviewed. So please, please, please read and look over the definitions of our different priority designations and apply for your highest priority the first time so it doesn't trigger the cure process. Please look at all of the forms that you have to have that must be included with your application. And the most important is the social equity attestation form on our cannabis business page that has to be filled out and notarized. And on that third and fourth page are all of the documents that you can submit. And it's not an exhaustive list, but it's all the documentations that you can submit to prove that you are, in fact, a social equity applicant.
Thank you, Director, for clarifying that. Definitely go to the CRC website. It's clear there all of the municipalities that, or zip codes, sorry, that qualify as an economically disadvantaged area are laid out there. The attestation form is available for you guys to take a look at. Pay attention to. Definitely, if your business is 51% women-owned, minority-owned, or disabled veteran-owned, get that free certification that's available through the state. It's not a difficult process. And if you call and just ask questions, there's somebody willing to help you. So don't feel like it's overwhelming. I know we ran out of time. There's clearly a lot more questions and substance that we can go over, but I just want to thank everybody for joining us, especially the director. We know you're busy. Thank you, Cannabis for putting this together. Thank you for